you don't understand. This is like Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's like thousands of dead people under here. They're all gonna rise. It's gonna be like Thriller. All right. You know what's really great about this big reverb chamber that we're in is pretty soon I get to do a question and answer thing. So I have to talk like I've been doing for the whole show, like I'm addressing a bunch of 4-year-olds, which I hope you don't have to take offense to. But I just hear the reverb, so I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Devin Townsend. What I'm doing in a church, I'm not entirely sure. However, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. So we're going to play a couple more songs, and by a couple I mean one, and then I'll answer the questions, all right? Woo! Okay, how we do a pretty one? I always figured this song, I was saying this last night, even when it was written, I remember thinking, God, it's like an Archie comic, you know? Betty and Veronica, and well, it's not actually Archie, it's the beach party thing. So I picture like Annette Funicello and the guy with the tight, you know, Speedo thing from like 1965, the banana hammock, right? And she's sitting there like this, looking at him, and he's got his guitar and he's got a frock of blonde hair. This is how this song feels to me. So picture that in your minds. Aye, please. No? All right. Well then, don't, whatever, I don't even care. Come on, Annette. Don't help me raise the dead. Actually, it's not Annette. Her name is Donna. Donna the Dead. Bam! All right. I wouldn't applaud for that. Oh, I got the lyrics. I got this. Plus, I got to put on my glasses for it, which will steam up again. Right, here we go. I got this. Do I need to reiterate about the beach party thing? No, we're clear. Okay, we got it. Well, I'm on a tune. Hang on a second. Talk amongst yourselves. So, what about the sports team that did the thing? I hear they were great. They were dominant over the other team, which means that metaphorically, that city is more powerful and therefore able to impregnate more females than the other team. Yay for sports ball! That's just not true. I do like it. I do like it. And I'm only saying that because Dave at Merch loves it and he's going to be pissed if we get in the van and gets tight. He's like, you talking shit about my sports team? I'm not. All sports teams are lame except for Dave's sports team. And that other one from Canada that plays with the ball.
Loving you is a time
and now comes the dubious part of the show. Well, I have to answer a bunch of questions, not have to, where I've chosen to, because it's all my doing here, all my fault necessarily. Are you guys still freezing out there? Yeah. See this thing here they covertly put up here? It's a heater. So actually, I'm a little warm. It's like, I might be a little too warm actually, but just for the sake of morale, I'm gonna keep my winter outfit on. All right. This does feel like some sort of weird movie, you know, where everybody's got some crazy cult thing that they're showing up to, and there's a guy at the top going, yes, and when the holy pineapple doth come out at night, one must then decree that all beyond pineapples are rendered useless. Amen.
Amen.
All right, one guy in the back, fucking pineapple, yeah! All right, so here's a litany of questions in which I will answer with this radio announcer voice, because this is a defense mechanism I use when I feel awkward. All right, here we go. From a guy, Devin, will you do something like the Tune Track demo session again? Okay, I think this is a very possible maybe. For those who have not seen that, what I did was they asked me to write a song in 2 hours, and the computer crashed, and all the gear was going crazy, and I managed to pull something out of the hat, and it was entertaining for those who didn't have to do it, because for those who had to do it, it required the loss of whatever hair was left on my body. So I was Brazilian for about 2 weeks after that. Maybe, there you go. The first question led me to try and riff on it in a way that wasn't particularly interesting, but I'm going again. Did you find Jesus through 7s and 11s when you had to make a stand? Now that is a question that doesn't make a lot of sense to most people, therefore I can spin it in any way I choose. So I will say that when you do make oatmeal, the first thing that you have to remember is when you are browning the oatmeal, it has to be done at a low temperature and for a long period of time. That provides a type of crunch that offsets the tartness of the cranberries. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that the idea of finding anything religiously is akin to someone telling me that they have answers full stop. I think that I have an inability to understand everything. And every day that goes by, it gets more and more vague. So I have found nothing through 7s and 11s, and I've made no stand. The only thing that I've done recently that I can be proud of is the other night I peed standing up in the middle of the night. Because, right? Because at 46 years old, I'm finding that it's just my inclination just to sit in the middle of the night and just do this. And it always takes too long. It always takes too long, right? So that was me trying to riff on a question that I have no solid answer for. So that's 2 for 2 that are not particularly interesting. However, I think that if I adjudicate myself much further, this is going to be more awkward than it always is. So I'm going to stop that. The self-criticism is now stopping, and I'm going on to the third question, which inevitably will be awesome because it's from a lady. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Lydia, and she says, fact, I am already married. So no worries, this is a threatening mail so far. All right, fact, my husband, Jordy, is a huge fanboy, it says in capital letters, of you, of course, which he says almost upset. Question, if I had paid all expenses, would you have come and sang at our wedding? Ah, that is so sweet. Ah, no. So... Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Because my social awkwardness, again, like this, the way I'm speaking right now, and the music and the performance and all this stuff that I've been doing for 25 years, it actually masks huge insecurity and like a very introverted type of personality. And when I go to these events, specifically when it's something like this, when you're invited to a place, and it was for someone that you don't know, but they have some sort of emotional investment in your work, and if you're the type of person who is over-analytical to the point of complete neurosis, the entire experience would be me sitting there going, this is fucking weird. This is super weird. This is super weird. I'm so happy that they're happy. And I'm, oh, hey, yeah, no, it's nice to meet you too. That's great. Oh, yeah. Right on. I hope is that tofu? No, it's not. Okay, I'll pass. And then I spin in my brain to the point where it's going to cause me much more problems than it's worth. But I have to say, I'm so happy that you're getting married. Forget the divorce rate, even though it's like 52% at this point. Because of your handwriting, it's straight up, which makes me think that you've got a linear personality, which will keep the whole thing financially in straight. And I wish you the best of luck. And if I could be there, I would. I probably wouldn't, but I really appreciate the offer. Thank you so much. All right. I told you, I warned you. If you want to pee or get a drink, it's going to be in a couple minutes, but you could probably go and do either of those right now. Just don't drop shit on your way out. All right. Do you enjoy beach holidays or city holidays? Beach holidays. I'll tell you the best example of a holiday in my mind. What's that? Oh, you dropped something too? Man, it's the dead waiting to take your bottles and throw them around. I remember when I was younger thinking the best holiday would be to lie on a beach somewhere with like 8 Vicodin and 2 bottles of red wine, getting perpetual blowjobs from the type of human beings that aren't actually, it would have to be robots because I would have a hard time forgetting the fact that I am making other human beings do things for my sake. So it would have to be a bunch of sex robots ultimately. And I would be drinking lots of drinks with like pineapples and all that sort of stuff. There'd be no one anywhere. And there'd probably be another robot like stroking my hair and telling me that I got like a proliferance of chest hair when I actually don't. But now, my favorite holiday is staring at a wall when I get home from tour for 4 days in hopes that the family just doesn't talk for 4 days. But they do, and I love them dearly. So I'm not playing at their wedding either, apparently. Only because they haven't invited me as a result of hearing my answers. Wasn't as funny as I was hoping. Oh, another one. So I think that it's probably just like slippery bottles. They hand you drinks that are just coated in Vaseline. And you're just like, whoop, 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 whoop. Well, no. So, more questions. Here I go, sitting in this pose, which demonstrates a certain amount of confidence because the legs are spread, which doesn't necessarily mean that you're protecting yourself. Hey! I'm emotionally vulnerable, but I'm physically ready for whatever comes. What is your favorite 80s song? Okay, let me think. It would have to be, you did that one on purpose. I can tell. That is without the subtlety that comes with the whoop, 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 whoop. Good though, I appreciate the effort. I think it would be a combination or a toss-up between Orinoco Flow by Enya, whom I love. And I'll tell you why, because when I was a kid, I was so terrible with the concept of women. I didn't appreciate the fact that just the other side of the human species. On some level, I was convinced that women were goddesses. And Enya played into that for me. I was just like, oh, she's a goddess and she's gonna be on an island by herself with the Vicodin and all the people. She'll be stroking my hair and singing Exile to me. And then when I got a little older and I realized, oh, all human beings are disgusting, fundamentally. We're just assigned different tackle at birth, and our position in the birthing process predisposes us to a type of mentality that, hey, we're stuck. Oh, plus gender roles are really great too, right? I mean, I'd love to wear a dress tonight. Unfortunately, it would make me feel not super tough, so I've worn camouflage pants. So I'm surprised you can see my legs. And the other song that I liked from the 80s was Run, Runaway by Slade. However, it really bothered me because I had an allowance of $2.50 a week that I could spend on that one record, and fucking Bon Jovi released Runaway that same week, and I went and bought Runaway thinking it was Run, Runaway, and have resented Mr. I've got tons of chest hair for my entire life. Okay, also, what's the deal with Got a Little Doggy and He's Full of the Woof Woof, which is off of the Empath song. Okay, I have got a little doggy and he's full of the woof woof. We've got a dog that, when he was a puppy, got traumatized because he heard a sound in the living room, went running out, and a raccoon had gotten into our kitchen. And he face-to-face approached what I can only assume he thought of as a terrible monster. And now if a gnat lands on a leaf 3 blocks away, our dog turns himself inside out, going crazy. And for someone who has got something I think is referred to as misophonia, which is easily irritated by sound, the constant like, oh my god, 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 makes me fucking crazy. So when I was writing Borderlands, I thought, what sort of rhythmic pattern would go da-da-da-da-da, getting a bop, bop, bop. And I thought, well, clearly, got a little doggy and he's full of the woof, woof. All right. You don't feel that Empath became a sort of, what does this say? Burt Parliament project? Oh, something the art project. I feel a little less aim in the topic in general, but I love it anyways. Okay, I think what you're trying to say is, do you feel like you vaporized and disappeared up your own asshole during the process of making Empath? Yes, but I fucking earned it. And I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why, to me, as disparate as the music comes across, it's still a linear project. Up to this point, and specifically over the past 10 years, I've made conscious efforts artistically to deny the parts of my nature that I thought were an aberration on some level. When we first had children, I was so confused by Strapping Young Lad, Ziltoid, and these parts of my personality that I had assumed that they were intruders. They were not actually a part of my psychological makeup. So I spent 10 years denying any emotion or any musical style that veered in that direction. And it was only when I was able to confront not only the fear of that type of artistic motivation, but also my fear of myself, that I recognized that this is not only a part of me, but something that needs a voice. If it doesn't have a voice, then it's going to fester. So Empath became musically disparate in terms of its dynamics in order to represent a type of, in a sense, internal therapy of allowing those thoughts to manifest without each or any of them in particular defining this period. The ultimate effect of that, not only empathy requiring some sort of emotional dynamic, but also the idea of life is truly like that. Life has the ups and downs. It's not just peaches and cream. It's not just darkness and hate. It's all of those things. So in order to make something that was more true to life, as opposed to something like Addicted, even though I liked it, it was required for me to make something that was shocking emotionally, something that as I was listening to it, I didn't know what was going to come next. And the peaks and valleys of that creates an experience to me that is much more akin to day-to-day life than something that denies parts of your own personality, specifically your artistic personality. So it's a combo of things. It is artistically up my own ass, but it is in light of that, it describes a linear trajectory that required that type of artistic freedom. So, all right. A smattering of applause. The crowd goes mild. All right. Star Trek or Star Wars? Which one do you prefer? Well, clearly, I think. And I'll tell you why. It's because of the soundtrack. When I was younger, people talk about, okay, well, how did you learn to articulate yourself emotionally through music? And for me, it was not only the soundtrack to Star Wars, which very clearly articulated the differences sonically between good and evil. It was broad strokes. It's like Darth Vader, he's dan, 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 and then the good guys had the good guys thing with the flutes and the, the little piccolo thing. So as a young child, I was able to put those two pieces together. I was like, okay, well, if I wanted to express myself musically, this is a good way for me to learn. That also extended to the musicals in the 70s. Jesus Christ Superstar, West Side Story, Paint Your Wagon. A lot of the times, the dialogue in those musicals are very cringy now. was like, we're happy, we're eating a sandwich, 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 sandwich. And you know, when you're a kid, you're like, he's eating a sandwich, I get it. But as an adult, you're just like, oh God. In fact, that cringe thing that I'm talking about, I called it, me and my friends when we were younger, we used to call it the piss willies. Because as a guy, when you're using a urinal, you may be standing there and then just randomly your body goes, how's it? And that's a similar thing that I feel now when I listen to the dialogue in musicals. However, they really clearly illustrate it in a way that a young child could understand what happy sounds like, what sad sounds like, what confused sounds like. And so as a result of that, Star Wars. Although I do like Star Trek as well. I like that one thing that they did. It goes when the starship flies by. And I like Picard because he has the same hair. And, yeah. Yes, Paul, you're talking to me quietly? It's time for the interval. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I will be back. It will be the same thing that's going on now with the songs from earlier, except more of them. So if you are sick of it now, it's not going to get any better. So you might want to just bugger off. If not, I'll see you back in 20 minutes. There's urinals, there's toilets, there's drinks, there's lots of stuff, and we'll see you again. If there's any more questions you want to ask Dave up at merchandise, not that I'd send you to merch, because that would be gauche, but feel free to do that. I will see you in 20 minutes. You all right? Yeah. You having a good night? Thank you for coming. I don't know if I'm in my monitors here, bud. How far? Oh, there I am. So sweet. All right. So this is I got a day off tomorrow, and then we go to Tel Aviv, and then I'm going to Cyprus for a week to do a meditation retreat because I'm super centered. And then we go to the UK, and then I tour for the rest of the year, and hooray. So, I would like to now take this opportunity to go back a couple of minutes to what we were talking about right before the break, where I was talking about my love for musical theater. Right? Yeah, that's right. I was Hamlet in grade 12. So here's a song from my musical theater mind to your disinterested musical theater minds. Something that we ordered. We ordered some sort of curry thing, and I got an extra scharf. Isn't that what it is? No, that's German. Isn't that for hot? Really? What is it? Shell? Yeah, extra scallops. All right. Look at that dude over there, he's super scalloped. All right, I've already gone through that one. All right. Gabriel writes, your repertoire is a journey through the emotional stages of your life. Bing. Which albums of your past represent the worst
handwriting.
Hang on, I got this. Which elements of your past remote the work with the Devin of today? What about the beers? Wait, this can't be right. It is dark and I'm a little cold. What about the least? Oh, I see. What the most with the Devin of today? Oh, okay, so which of my repertoire resonates most with the Devin, of today? Which one is the least? Unfortunately, every record that gets done no longer has any validity after it's released. Maybe you get about 6 months out of it, but the whole process of making a record is where it is valid. And after that point, if you've managed to articulate it clearly enough, then what it represents is a photograph of a process that in retrospect you can then say, okay, this is what I've learned. But it doesn't resonate necessarily. The only way that the work resonates past the point of its release is whether or not I feel like it's been done poorly or if it's been done accurately. And so as a result of that, the ones that represent me least would probably be Physicist and the self-titled SYL record. Physicist, not because I dislike the music, but because the recording was done in a frame of mind where I felt like I didn't put enough effort into it. And SYL because my frame of mind was much more focused on the Devin Townsend band album, Accelerated Evolution at the time. Now the reason Physicist wasn't done properly is I had bought a brand new digital recording unit. It was like this 16-track thing that was set up in my basement, and I made the full scope of what I was trying to do with the keyboards on that record. I recorded it all, I was thrilled with it, and then I found a button on it that I was like, what does this do? Beep, and I erased the whole fucking thing. And so, yeah. And that actually reminds me of a story. I have a good friend that we went on tour and there was a deli tray behind. There he is again. He just moves around. There was a deli tray in the backstage and he spent 10 minutes making himself a sandwich. He got the right roll with the seeds on it and he put the mayonnaise and the type of mustard with the little granulites in it. And he did the cheese, the cumin cheese and the frill. And he spent 10 minutes making this sandwich. You could tell he was stoked on it. Consider that the first part of the Physicist record. And then this is with strapping, and the guitar player Jed came in, and he'd had a few beer, and saw Steve holding the sandwich, and he just went, biff, and hit the sandwich, and it torpedoed all over the backstage. And then the guy made himself a peanut butter sandwich and sulked in the corner. The peanut butter sandwich is what I ended up doing on Physicist once I had erased my frilly cumin cheese sandwich version of Physicist. Wow, that was pretty good. I pulled that one out. All right, so what do we got next? Do you know any Dutch words? Yes, scallops. If no, what would you like to know? I would like to know how you say ingrown toenail. What's that? Can you please say that? Right, please.
Ingegroeide teennagel.
Yeah, that's the one. Ingegroeide teennagel. So, one of my favorites. I ask because I have one, and when I go to the doctor, I can say, excuse me, you scallop-looking man. I have an ingegroeide teennagel, and I need to have it addressed. Stat. All right, thank you. You gotta understand I'm from Canada, so I say a boot, so it's the same thing, right? All right. I just bought a 7-string. Any suggestions on a song, a 7-string song to start with from your back catalog? 7-string, I guess I used it. Meshuggah? Yeah, try and learn Meshuggah. Good luck. From mine though, you could probably try a simple lullaby because it goes as opposed to Meshuggah. Of course, you know what's great about Meshuggah as well, other than everything, is Fred, who's a good buddy. He was telling me that when they play, all he had in his headphone was click track, and they're just fucking, you know, but it's all he hears in his head is which I thought was a interesting accoutrement. It's French for ingrown toenail. All right, so what do you do after you've released an album to relax? Well, oh God, I have flatlined emotionally since Empath. What do? I stare at the wall. I tend to, don't talk about masturbating. Don't talk about masturbating. I don't masturbate 2 or 3 times a week. I don't know, what do humans do to relax? I can't figure it out. I tend to do this thing where, oh, I know what, I do know what I do. I have baths. And so when I go to a hotel, I'm always asking for the one with the bath. Even if we go to some piece of shit hotel, I want one with a bath. And I run myself a hot tubby tub. And then I float around in dudes' pubic hairs that I've never met. But I'm willing to shut off the connection to that for the sake of the warmth. And I really do find that relaxing. And obviously I do other things like relaxing stuff that only I would be able to know about. It'd be way too complicated to explain, so I won't. So many questions, it says, with a cute exclamation mark. Do you prefer to fly or drive to a gig? Fly! Although, today was cool because Paul and Dave and I, Paul doing sound, Dave's doing merch, if I can kick all the asses. However, we were talking about a type of product that we were going to try and market to make us filthy rich. Because, you know, I love doing this, but you're always thinking, okay, well, what can I do to retire? And we came up with the idea of, what if you had a type of cream for men past the age of 40 that makes your scrotum, like, taut? Because if you have a long scrotum, and we were trying to think of names, we were thinking Test Tight was the one that we came up with. But then we happened to look, because we were convinced this was going to work. It had like a scrotum elastical compound, I forget the name of it. But then we looked online, and there was actually a product called Balls Up. And so we were so enamored with that particular topic that we forgot to pay for the gas in Germany, and we left, and then we pulled over in Holland, and Paul had to phone the police, and there was already a claim made for 3 dudes talking about their scrotums who ran out with 100 euros worth of gas, and that wouldn't have happened if I had been in a plane. So maybe I prefer driving because that was pretty cool. All right, so what else we got here? All right. P.S. It's fucking cold and my hands are cold. Writing sucks right now. Oh wait, that's the end of his question. I was thinking that was the best thing that I've gotten so far. Everybody's just like, do you have any questions? Like, no, I got no questions. I just have a statement. Fuck this. All right. You've talked about accountability in the past with regards to the type of content you put out. Is there ever a point where you create something that's perfect, something you're really pleased about, or just ended up being very good from your own perspective, but yet you still didn't want to release for fear of what it might bring back to you? That's a great question. How do you deal with this mindset? I think this was more of an issue in the past when the activities that I engage in on a daily basis weren't congruent with what my image of what I was trying to achieve artistically was. I think that part of Empath and part of the process now is learning not only self-respect and self-care, but also self-confidence to know that if you are let loose and you are able to articulate yourself without any sort of regulator on, that you're not going to do something that's intrinsically toxic to yourself. So at this point, that doesn't happen as much. I've had several songs in the past before I had sort of started to engage in recognizing the activities that I've done that have caused me to be in need of validation from others. Prior to that, during the strapping era, and a little bit past that, I had written 3 or 4 songs that I was just like, no, that's horrible. The only problem is that at that point as well, I just released them. So I think that I have this odd relationship with myself where I'm going to do it. If it comes out of me, I'm going to release it. So I'm fortunate now that I'm more, again, my personal habits are very much in line with what my goals are artistically. For example, I don't masturbate 3 times a week or tomorrow night. So it's like easy for me to know that the songs that come as a direct result of that activity are not going to come out on the next record, which should be out in about 8 months. So, but yes, accountability is a big part of it. I'm joking about it, obviously, but I think accountability is something that in the past I had experimented with not participating in, specifically during the Alien era of my work. I thought that by the time you released a record, your responsibility to it was over. However, by not consciously being aware of what it was that I was putting out and the ramifications of it, what it drew to me were things that were very unhealthy for me, and ultimately ended up in the demise of Strappy Young Lad. I think that the documentary series that we put out for Empath, and a lot of the work that I do that may come across as over-explaining the process, is due to the intensity of the work. Tends to be such that if I feel I don't explain it in a way that is crystal clear, its intention can be misinterpreted, and I don't want to be responsible for that if I have an option. So that was a good question, thank you. And yes, it is fucking cold, and writing sucks right now, I understand that. So, next question. Is pee stored in the balls? If yes, how do women store it? How do women store it? Okay, well this is from a man, so this is no surprise. No, pee is not stored in the balls. It is actually stored in the bladder, and women have a bladder too. It's just much less responsible for the emotional desire to write questions like this in women. However, it's the same basic mechanism. I think urine is interesting because it is sterile. Did you know that? And most of us, I'm sure, if you're having a bath like the one that I'm going to have tonight, you pee in the tub. So I think it's not only stored in the bladder, it's also stored in the tub. All right. Whoa, holy shit. It's the pee-pee sounds. Okay. Lame question, I know, but do you own pets? If so, dogs, cats, crocodiles, what are they called? Okay. I have 2 dogs. One is full of the woof woof, and his name is Ollie. And I have another one named Emily. And we have 2 cats. One of them dubiously named by a 3-year-old kid, so its name is Pretty. And we have a black cat. And I'm of the opinion that all black cats are fundamentally the same creature. My favorite cat that I had was a black cat right before this one, and her name was Spooky. And then she died, and then we inherited Lincoln, who is the same cat. So that's what it was. We had goldfish and we killed them maliciously. I looked them in the eyes before I just flushed them. I was just like, motherfucker, you go there. I didn't actually. It was, we said to a 5-year-old child at that point, if you can prove to us you can take care of a goldfish, you can have a plant. And then we killed 3 goldfish. Can you play Nobody's Here, please? I don't know it. So I appreciate, oh, there's another part of the question. How about you play Terminal instead? Okay. I actually don't know Nobody's Here, but I will try it, All right. How do you, what's the light say here? Light doesn't say anything. How do you deal with insecurity as a creative person? Well, I think part and parcel of being a singer or a musician in general is I think we all have some sort of need for validation. I think that me, very specifically, when I was a teen, I was so desperate for people to look at me. I'll do anything. I'll jump around. In Steve Vai's band, I was doing all this ridiculous stuff. I was rooted in a type of sense of lack of self-worth, I think, that has become the focus of my artistic pursuits lately, is to try and find ways to deal with that. Because ultimately, I think if you're going to present work to other people, and if you're going to be away from your home and your family for as long as touring takes us away, I was away 10 months in 2016 from wife and kid and aging parents and all this, you've got to have limits and borders for your own personal, oh fuck, Dave, you just totally derailed. What are you trying to say? Hang on a second. Up to this point, I have had that need for validation that now I'm trying to instill in myself a sense of self-worth so that when I am out now, I have parameters and borders that don't allow me to give away all my personal energy. I think that is indicative of the pursuit of self-esteem and the insecurity that has maybe led me to the career that I'm very fortunate to have right now, is something that I think each one of us as artists have not a responsibility but the opportunity to look into ourselves, look into what it is that is making us feel insecure or insular or in need of such attention, and then through the process of trying to fix that, I think that's where our identities come through, and each one of us has something unique to offer. And so what I would suggest is just recognize where your failures are, where your successes are, and then write about it. And I think that makes the creative process something that's ultimately a form of therapy on some level, and then hopefully if you do it in a way that's coming from a place of emotional honesty, it will resonate with other people in ways that can hopefully help as well. Insecurity, I think, could be a tool if you choose to deal with it and not wallow in it. So who knows? Can you play Nobody's Here? You say my life with Nobody's Here. Oh God. Okay, so I'm gonna have to learn Nobody's Here in a moment. That ought to be interesting to do in front of all of you. Okay. Why is why called why? Because I think about thinking way too much. My entire process is rooted in over-analysis to the point where I make mountains out of molehills. I've recently started meditating every day. I've been trying to do it for 10 years, but my reasons for doing that are not to become enlightened as much as it's a type of mental exercise that allows me every day to focus on one thing to the exclusion of all others, which prevents that sort of spiral of existential thinking. So why was called why? Because I think at the time when I started recognizing that that was a liability, that song was in my creative focus. Yay! All right, there's a lot here. Are telescopes gay? Well, they're phallic for sure, and I don't think that a penis in and of itself is gay. I think, the difference between penises and vaginas, I saw a poster the other day that said, choose your weapon, and it had a picture of a penis, and it had a picture of a vagina, and I think that neither of them are inherently gay, but I mean, telescopes are not, they are just things. However, I'm going to move on to the next question because I don't know how much more I can say about that without digging myself a hole. So, onward. Can you compare the creative burst of Empath post-DTP with that of the 4 albums in the, like Key, Addicted, Deconstruction, Ghost? No, Empath is a lot more visceral for me because I think what started becoming very clear to me is that as a defense mechanism after having children, I became prone to intellectualize my emotions. And I found that I was doing that to the behest of the music. I was able to say, look, the reason why I am afraid of confrontation is because my family was reluctant to display overt displays of emotion because their parents had a history of things that were maybe abusive, and that manifested as a fear of confrontation with my mother, that she ended up blah, 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 blah. I was able to do that without actually being able to participate in the emotion. So Empath was a conscious decision from the beginning, hence the dynamicism of the music that we were talking about earlier. That was based in, I really want to participate in emotions. I really want to know what it means to love something unconditionally. And what that opened up, and the reason why this record became such a visceral emotional reaction is, for example, if you choose to understand love in its pure form, I believe it also means that you have to accept death. And that's more of a fear-based process, and something that is primal. And so Empath was based in it was a lot of holy shit. By the end of it, I found myself crying over things that were ridiculous, like Tylenol commercials. The guy had a headache, and I was like, headache, this poor guy. And the best example of it was we went on vacation and I was shattered as a result of it. And somebody offered me a banana ice cream. And he said, "You look like you could use an ice cream." And immediately it was like, "I could use an ice cream." And I had like tendrils of snot attached to the ice cream. And I'm like, "It's so good." And I went back to my family who were, blissfully unaware of this creative process that I was trying to hide from everybody so I didn't look like a total fucking banana. And I came back with my ice cream. I'm like, "It's ice cream." And they were just like, "Okay." So I think the difference between the 4 records and this record was the 4 records were left brain and this one was right brain. All right, we're getting towards the end. There's gonna be more songs, hooray. Okay, so. Hi Devin, do you feel a certain sense of creative release after Empath? Has it changed you as a person? Thanks a lot. Yes, I do, and the ways that I do is, and it's unfortunate because of the reverb in this place, I find myself being more of a character tonight because than I would like to be. But I think, full stop, what has happened as a result of Empath is I feel much less of a need to please people. I feel less of a need to please people that, for years if somebody dislikes what I do, I would feel like hurt by it. Like someone was like, "This guy's an idiot, I hate his music, fuck this guy, piece of shit." I'd be like, "Why does he hate me?" And now I'm just kind of like, "Ah, fuck it, whatever." And I think that was a side effect to the record, but one that has been very productive. However, what it has also led me to have to cope with now is the fallout of this emotional openness, which has resulted in a type of depression. And I don't think depression is the best word for it, but a type of downward emotional grade that I'm on right now that I'm willing to participate in as opposed to deny. And I think that this will ultimately lead to something creatively in the future that's very healthy. But it has changed me as a person a lot, absolutely. I think boundaries are something that I have had problems with before, but now I'm learning that saying no is within my capacity. It's still cold, isn't it? All right. What 2 artists would you like to work with in the future? Is Michael Ackerfeld an option? Woo! You could be Devin Townsend. I am very envious of Michael because he can grow a mustache. Affectionately referred to as the Acker stash. And if I'm not as kind, the cock duster. But I love Mike, and I went to his house in Sweden, and his significant other suggested that we write a song together. And I was like, "Yeah, we should. And we wrote the worst song that either of us have ever written. So I sang it in Swedish, and you heard my Dutch. So it's marginally better, only because it isn't. It's terrible. And then we used his daughter's Casio keyboard for the drums, and it is horrible. In fact, he won't send it to me. But I think when you do hear it, I think it's got a Swedish name. Jag känner mig stark som en viking, right? So I feel strong like a Viking. I think once you hear it, you will never ask for that again. Okay, so, there's more questions. I'm doing good. I can't wait to read more questions. Actually, I do. Thank you, guys. My psychological thing right now is thinking, why would people give a fuck? Why would these people give a fuck? But I'm going to let that go, and I'm going to gain the type of self-confidence that I am known for and want to be known for. And I was like, clearly everybody wants to come to a church at 2 degrees above zero and listen to a guy make loosely veiled jokes about the questions that they're asked. Can you please play Why, please? Even without choir and orchestra, it will be epic. Standing ovation, yes. Okay, well there's another thing for my workload. We'll get to that in a moment. It's not a word. Freebird! All right. When you write, do you decide / know beforehand if it will be a start or a short, traditional structured or epic multi-part, or does this just happen? The way I write music is best described as a human being, I participate in moments of emotional significance. That can be defined best as somebody is born, somebody dies. You're present in the face of something that is clearly beyond your reasoning, your quantification, and those emotional moments make an imprint on your creative mind in such a way that when you follow the creative motivations, it's about following the ones that lead most towards what you're currently emotionally most interested in. As that process goes, it's more of a matter of taking things away so it no longer irritates you, rather than following a logical musical progression. And by the time the record's done, it's often in the last week that the nature of the music or the structures of the songs start to make sense, because I know what it isn't more so than what it is until the end. And what I'm following is that initial moment of emotional significance, and the hope is that by the end of it, you're able to articulate it in ways that strangers can recognize the truth in that moment. And that truth is beyond an artist. So a lot of times I find it difficult to accept compliments for, oh, you wrote this song, because I think our biases as artists and our middle-class white Canadian male plays into it. And there's going to be people that resonate with that truth through that bias and people who don't. But ultimately, the truth of music, the truth of art, is what you're trying to achieve. And as artists, I think we just randomly and chaotically just scramble in the dark until it feels somewhat like that. And thank God for a deadline, or else it would just never get done, right? So that's basically the process. All right. Apparently, you turned your bipolarity into a creative strength. But how did you find a balance to this / medication when it comes to family health? When I never did drugs when I was a teen. I never was interested. I didn't drink, I didn't do any of that. Then I did the Steve Vai project, and then I moved to Newcastle in the UK and joined the Wild Hearts, and I did a bunch of stuff. And the combination of being sort of not a spoiled child, but I was like the golden child in my family. It was like you were the one that everybody was like, you can't do anything wrong. And then I got these opportunities that were really, it fed into that sense of self-importance in such a way that when I did the Steve Vai project and it didn't go in the direction that I thought it was going to go, and then I moved to LA and I realized that these things that I connect with so profoundly with music, that truth that I'm looking for, is ultimately a commodity. I started recognizing like this sense of just disillusionment. Then I moved to Newcastle and I joined this band, and they were all just like beating the shit out of each other and doing drugs, and great people. I loved the music. And then I came home and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna start doing drugs now. So I started smoking weed, and it was like whatever. And I was like, you know what I really want to do is just psychedelic drugs. So I just did a shitload of like mushrooms and acid and all these sort of things. Oh, the phone's ringing. Yeah, but maybe he got electrocuted. It was a taser. It's like right down his pocket. It's like a little tiny taser. He does it as a bit of like a jolt. He's just like, hi, beep. So what ended up happening is that the combination of that sort of sense of self-importance plus the position that I had been put in and put myself in professionally that reinforced that kind of narcissism that was already latent, combined with what those psychedelic drugs tend to do to people. Anybody who's done these things has a very similar experience, and a lot of it becomes clear. It's like, okay, well, the universe is this and that and the other thing. Everybody's perspective on it is different, but ultimately it's like infinite mosaic, everything's connected, we're in the center of it, blah, 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 blah. I interpreted that as, oh, clearly I am the one. I am super special. I am like different than everybody else. And then I proceeded not only to make music about that publicly, but also to make a ton of personal mistakes based on this level of like narcissism that when I did make those mistakes, I was diagnosed as bipolar. And I was on medication for a decade. And it was, I lost I gained like 60 pounds, I lost all my hair, and it was intense, but it did set me straight. It was good. Then when we had children, I went to a psychiatrist and I said, look, I would like you to entertain the idea under your supervision, that perhaps the diagnosis of bipolar was not necessarily one, although I did have the criteria that put me into that psychological category. I'd like you to entertain the fact that maybe I had done a shitload of drugs and I had a bunch of experiences that put me in a sense where my sense of self-importance, I misinterpreted and I made a bunch of mistakes. So I'm going to try and come off of these antipsychotic medications under your guidance. I'll come back every week. If at any point during this you start to see me acting in ways that are consistent with the diagnosis of any of these mental illnesses, I will then admit that this is the case. However, if it's not, I would like you to entertain the fact that maybe without this I can function. So it has been 15 years without the medications, and well, I don't know if it's, thank you, but I don't know if it's necessarily something to applaud. I think the diagnosis of bipolar schizophrenia, these are very real psychological ailments, and the people that suffer from that deal with it in ways that can often lead to, if it's untreated, suicide, depression, manic episodes that can ruin families. So it's important, I think it was important for me to have a diagnosis that was based in, you know, an extraordinary circumstance that I was under. And I was very willing to admit that if that had gone in the way of like an authentic psychological diagnosis of that, I was prepared to deal with that as well. So what I'm saying with this is, you know, I'm fortunate to have had the support of very understanding, kind, and supportive and tolerant family and friends to get me through this. And I think if you're in the situation where you've got these sorts of things going on, it's important for you to take the right steps for it, because it can be devastating. Ultimately, what Empath is rooted in as a theme is, although life is crazy, although there's ups and downs, you can't give up. And I think what's indicative of not giving up is recognizing where your strengths and weaknesses are and then dealing with it. So for me, I had a bunch of intense situations, and so my diagnosis of bipolar, and you know, all the interviews I did, the magazine covers, and I dressed up like a mad scientist, and you know, I did a bunch of interviews on mushrooms back in the day. Of course you sound fucking crazy, but I think ultimately public failure in the ways that I've been fortunate to have had to deal with have allowed me to improvise now in a way that is less fearful. So I would also suggest, as creative people, as I said earlier, it's about getting to the root of not only who you are, but what your dysfunctions may be, and admitting through those failures where you can progress. I think it's awesome for improvisation. So that's how I would say. And then when it comes to family, family and your responsibilities with such are very important to maintain as well. I mean, it's like someone just yelled there and I just lost my train of thought, but that's okay, because there's another question and I just blew a fart. So, when is the next Casualties record out? Also, do you have guitar tabs for these records on sale? Casualties Are Cool is something that I did with my friend Shay, and we've been working on that for, it took us 4 years to do it, and I think that's why I like it so much, because it had no agenda, there was no pressure, and when it came out, it was ready. The same thing's gonna happen with the next one. Over the past 4 years, since the first record's been out, we have written one song, so. But it's great, it's really good. And I think that's the thing I like about Shay so much as a singer too. Like a lot of people, when you're working with them, the enthusiasm comes out. It's just like, I will sing anything, I'm ready to do this. As opposed to Shay, I'm like, you wanna do this? She's like, yeah. And that's why it works, and I love that. So whenever both her and I feel like, you know, because we do get together because we're good friends, we just end up hanging out. And then we say, should we write? And we're both like, eh. So eventually, we're almost at the end here, guys. All right. What does this strapping, slightly older lad make of the Bavo Church? Yeah, I have an interesting relationship with religion. I think, you know, everything that I write is rooted in trying to be in the presence of something that is greater than I. But my sense of what spirituality is often rooted in, like, I really like dirt. You know what I mean? I really like grass and like trees and things like that. To me, that implies a sort of humility between the connection between the infinite and humans, that as gorgeous of a place as this is, it's not what I feel when I think about spirituality in a sense, but it's really good. And you know, the bar is great, and there's dead people under here, and you know, so hooray. And the acoustics are beautiful, and the people are nice, and you know, I mean, I just like, I don't know, man. It's like, I'm suspicious of anybody that thinks that they understand. I mean, I think that human beings are evolutionarily at a stage where we are just one step past, you know, the amoeba at this point, you know, bonobos. And that's why I like base humor so much. People are always like, why do you always sort of sabotage your work with like shit jokes and all this stuff? I'm like, because we're absurd. As a species, we are so convinced that we are clever and that we are able to understand all these things, yet, you know, the next step for us is just computers. It's like AI comes in and then we become relegated to where the apes are to us. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we spend so much time going, well, maybe it's this and that, it's my art, and it's my music, and yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, I just think we're fucking absurd, right? So, but it is beautiful. Like, I mean, I can't imagine how many people died making this thing. When I went to the Taj Mahal in India the other day, and everybody's like, oh, it's a monument to love. And then you hear about it, and it's like, yeah, but the guy was so obsessed with his work, he had so much power that he cut the hands off the workers when they were done, so no one else could make it, right? And then his son came in. This is great. He's like, all right, Dad, out of the pool. And he put him into jail, and then but they gave him the prison cell where he could look at the Taj Mahal. Like, I mean, just humans are just fucking gross, man. All right. But I think we have the potential for beautiful things, and this is one of them. Like, this guy. Look at him. He's a sloth, and he's sloth. All right. All right. So, what's next here? Can you specify the group of people that you thought would be alienated by Empath? Well, I think what ends up happening in music, as you get more visibility, as I've been fortunate to have had over the past few years, is that in order to keep the financial boat floating, it requires a certain amount of income per month. And I think that the risks that you need to take in order, or you're prone to take if you have a functioning band that you have to tour with, become less and less available to you. If you are responsible for example, $15,000 to $20,000 a month for the band, for the salaries, for the rehearsal space, for the storage space, your ability to take risks when you've chosen to make music like whatever it is that I do becomes less and less available to you, because everybody has a financial burden that they have to bear. So something like Empath takes the things that have typically generated income for me over the past 10 years, like Bend It Like Bender, or Kingdom, or you know, like the more 3.5 minute long song, starts with the chorus, verses minor key but down tempo, pre-chorus is a little higher, guy walks by with an epic beard, I wish I had one, he's got his hands in the air, everybody goes, woo! I think at that point I started feeling to myself that if I made something that was more rooted in what I was doing back in the early 2000s, I've just got so much more to lose than I did at that point. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't have to worry about the goldfish, they're fucked, but it's like everything else. It's like kids and needs braces, and you know, it's like mortgage and all these things I didn't have when I was doing Ocean Machine. So the leap of faith that it took to make something that was rooted in, this is what I want to do. Whether or not people are going to think it's too artsy, whether or not people are going to think it's, you know, you can't put musical theater beside death metal or whatever. It's like, those are the decisions that I had to sort of face, but by confronting that as an artist, it was one of the things that I feel I needed to face. If I hadn't have done that, I would have just kept spinning my wheels. So I thought I was going to ostracize everybody, yet it's done better than any of them. So thank you. Oh my God, thank you so much. No one here is just like, yeah, we didn't buy it, dude. I don't know what you're saying. Thank you for. Right. A little while ago during a movie, I was perusing through my, A little while ago during a move, I was perusing through my stuff and came across an Xmas card I received from you during the DTP SYL days. So why did you stop sending me Xmas cards? AKA, how much merchandise has to flood before that happens again? Okay, well, there's two answers to this. When we first started, my wife and I, we had a record label, stroke, pick him up. We had a record label dubiously titled Heavy Debbie Records, which was phonetically spelled to boot. H-E-V-Y-D-E-V-Y, that now when I have to go in for a loan and we're still incorporated as such, they're like, what's the name of your business? I'm like, Heavy Debbie Records. Like, your name's Devin, it's about you. And I'm like, yeah. So at that time, we had our office in the basement. We produced shirts, and every year we send out Christmas cards, but there was only like 150 people. And the second part of this, other than the fact that it was much smaller back then, the second part of this is the postal rates in Canada went bananas over the past 10 years. To send a package to Montreal, one CD, costs $23 in postage, just the postage. Yet to send it to London costs $18. This is now, because we still send things. But the costs of doing that became counterproductive. So my hope is that the work itself and the effort that I put into trying to be present to people on social media or whatever makes up for that, but it doesn't. So please, I really hope we don't have a flood again. That sucked. All right, almost done, guys and ladies. Hi, I am a big fan. I saw a bunch of those on the drive-in here. It's because it's big fan. All right, so would you please sign my Empath CD and Art Shock magazine? Yeah, I mean, yes. However, I've got to say, and this is something that I've been repeating on this trip, and I hope this makes sense. In light of what I was trying to do with Empath, which was rooted in trying to instill in myself a sense of boundary that up to this point I haven't had, because I think I was so needing of people to like me, and I just didn't want to let anybody down, that what I would do is after every show I would stay and I would sign everybody's everything, and I would take pictures of everything with everybody, and upwards of 2 hours a night. What I started realizing over the last year is that started draining me on a psychological level in ways that made me, towards the end of DTP, really want to retreat from playing live at all. And it's not because I don't want to be around people, it's just that I want to be open enough with people and present enough with people when I'm participating in them, that level of openness leaves you vulnerable, in a sense, if you're an empathetic person or if you're a hypersensitive person, to just having your energy kind of taken away from you. And in order to do this in a way that is not only effective for me musically and professionally, but also healthy for me as a human being, I've decided on this tour to not do meet and greets and to not do the signings. And please understand that that is not based in a lack of desire to be present for you at all, because my appreciation for being able to do this is at an all-time high. Yet, in order for me to pursue this and continue it in a way that's going to have a longevity that I think will be good for myself and hopefully the audience, I need to set some boundaries for myself that up to this point, I don't feel I've had the self-confidence to do. So, yes, absolutely, I will sign anything, of course, but please, on this tour, I'm just going to retreat after the show in ways I've never done before, and it's very fucking hard, because it's, you know what I mean? Thank you. It's a long process, man. I mean, you have to be ready for it, I think, and I am, because I love it. Okay. That saving the world boots part in the Mighty Masturbator. That's great. That's great. Is that a reference to something? Where is the accent from? Well, it's a Canadian accent. Hi. Oh, hey, he's back. Woo! Hi. What do you got? Oh, you got your saving the world boots? Is this your question? No. All right. Well, Canada. I remember, have you guys ever seen the show Trailer Park Boys? Woo! Yeah, all right, so...
Ricky!
Yeah, Ricky. I remember when I first saw that, I was just like, oh man, everybody's gonna think we're a bunch of... And then I started thinking, I was like, fuck, that's all my buddies. That's my extended family. You know what I mean? Like, oh fuck, bud, we're doing the fucking saving the world boots there, bud. And I realized that not only am I Canadian to the point where the parody of it is not actually a parody, we're actually quite like that in a lot of ways. And especially on the East Coast too, that accent's great too. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go drive my car down to the bar. So, the saving the world boots, that's my, I got a buddy that lives down the street from me that's like, maybe 65 years old. He's like, oh yeah, bud, what you doing today? You got your boots on there? We're gonna go out and dig some shit in the backyard there, bud? So that's my Canadian, right? And is it a reference to something? Yeah, we're all Canucks in mighty Canuck land over there. We're a passive-aggressive bunch, verging on a socialist type of mentality, part of the Commonwealth, and our passive aggressiveness comes out in a very interesting way. Here's a practical example. If you're at a restaurant, and this is Canadian, I think this is where one of the fundamental differences between the Netherlands and Canada lies. In Canada, if the waitress comes up, you're eating a dish and you don't like the food, and the waitress goes, how do you like the food? We'll all be like, oh, it's really good. Oh, it's really good there. Oh, and she leaves, she's like, fucking, see what she's wearing there, bud? I can't believe it. She didn't even take my food. As opposed to the Netherlands, where my friend, and this is what I really like about it here, they're like, how do you like the food? You're like, I don't like it. Which saves so much time. And that's why I like it here as well, because I know where I stand. Yet in Canada, you don't know. It's like this weird kind of, and we're just, I don't know, maybe that's it. So yeah, that's where the saving rules came from. Is that lady at the restaurant that fucking was wearing those pants? All right, so, would you consider working with Simon Phillips? Is he the drummer? I don't know. No? I don't want to work with anybody. Every human being is another litany of emotional goo that you have to wade through. So no. But sure. All right. Hello again. What do you do to keep your head so perfectly hair-free? Well, it's called middle age, for one. It's called overthinking every aspect of your life to the point where neurosis becomes this huge underlying undercurrent to every decision. Nothing's easy. Why? Does it need to be that difficult? Absolutely not. I'm predisposed to it because, again, I have an inflated sense of self-importance that makes me think that every decision I make ultimately is of massive significance to everybody. If you do that, your head will be shiny, gleamy, clean. And the last question. All right. So, that organ right behind you, would you like to have at it here? Know what I heard about it today? This was the first gig that Mozart ever played. Did you know that? He played on this fucking organ, right? What was that? Yes, he says. So, I didn't notice how, like, intimidating that is. It's like, the nature of infinity is terrifying. I am a woman with the cherubs running betwixt my thighs. You shall play me, but you shall play me with a type of reverence heretofore not known. If you do not, eternal hellfire. I don't think I'm capable of wielding the energy that comes with such an organ. I'm barely capable of wielding the energy that comes from a much smaller organ. I like how it just keeps getting funnier. All right, so I'm gonna plug in my belt pack. Oh, it's already ready. I got a couple more songs. Oh, I said I'd try and learn. Nobody's here, and why? Fuck. Why? I don't wanna. Sorry, I didn't hear anything. All right. So, how the fuck's why go? I don't remember what song it was. Where's it go? That's the one on the new record, right? What's the first line?
Darling.
Darling, are you feeling alright? Okay, that's an attempt though. It counts as an attempt, right? Okay. All right, so nobody's here. Where the fuck's that song go? Yeah, he's like, I don't know. I don't remember. How's it start? It's the one that goes, and feel like there's nobody here. And it says fuck off it. What's the first chord? It's in C. Feel like there's nobody here. Feel like there's nobody here. Feel like there's no more fear. I wanna feel like this for you. Feel like there's nobody here. Relax, it doesn't matter anyway. Something another way. And I feel like there's nobody here. Feel like there's no more fear. I wanna feel like this for you. Feel like there's nobody here. Heroes, they take my breath away. Zero the time. See how the breakdown breaks ground. Zero's the dial. That was not bad. You gotta give me credit for getting that. Thank you so much for requesting that. I actually tried to remember it because I know it meant something to you, so thank you. I really do. Guys, it is such a pleasure for me to be on stage, and I don't have to change. I can wear the same thing. I've worn these for the past few days. I don't have to put on a stupid suit. I don't have to worry that in like the third song where it goes to the crunchy part, I know that I have to do the gurning face and put my foot on the monitor. It's like, it just seems like if you're in the right frame of mind for that stuff, it's great. But if it's not, if you just want to try and figure out where you're at so I can get the next tour, which comes here in October, to be awesome, I needed to go through this and sort of try and present myself as who I am, as opposed to a caricature of myself, which is, I think, ultimately what Empath is based in.